gas.
Max Fried returns just 1 week after the gods of the universe swung the earth around on a yo-yo string and smacked him in the face at Citi Field. In that return, Mr. Fried dominated and outdueled the best pitcher in the MLB, Jacob deGrom, by going 7 innings, giving up 4 hits, 2 runs, 6 Ks, no walks, and leads the Atlanta Braves to a series win over the silly boy Mets. Welcome to All Gas, All Georgia Sports. I am glad you guys are here. Welcome to the show. We have a great one for you today. In today's episode, we're going to cover the Braves series win, of course, some Deshaun Watson news updates, some Falcons news. We're going to talk about Michael Harris's big contract, big day the other night for him, and we have Top 5 Friday. Happy Friday, everybody. Top 5 Friday today, and in today's topic for Top 5 Friday is my favorite Falcons of all time. So, as always, we're going to kick the show off with a trivia question for you. So, going to go NCAA themed here, college football. Who has the most rushing yards in a single season in NCAA history? Who has the most rushing yards in a single season in NCAA history? So think about that, see if you know it. Also, a little bonus fact at the end. I'm going to give you second place just because. It's pretty cool. So anyways, going to get right into it with the Braves. Man, what a series. This was huge. Huge, especially considering after the last series in New York, I was wildly depressed about the outlook of the Braves season. Was not looking forward to the rest of it. I'm going to be honest with you. And I do this. My wife gives me a hard time. She says I'm the worst kind of fan because I just really swing with the emotions so much, where as soon as something bad happens, I want to rage quit. But luckily, I'm not out there on the field, and I just get to watch. And I will say, even though from her perspective, I seem like a crazy person, from my perspective, it's actually pretty fun because the up and down, the roller coaster ride is electric. And that's what I'm experiencing right now. So, the Braves just took 3 out of 4. After the last episode, we had just dominated 2 in a row. So this episode, we're going to cover the last 2 games. So the Scherzer game and the deGrom game. So recording this tonight, it's right before Friday. It's 11:54 on Thursday. And, we just wrapped up game 2 against deGrom. What a game. Honestly, both of these games were great. I would say the tension in both games was really high, although for much of I guess it would be game 3, but, when Scherzer was pitching, much of that game, it felt like it was out of reach. And actually, the Braves coaches, I felt it was out of reach too, which was very frustrating. But speaking of the coaches, Snitker gets ejected. He gets tossed. Loved seeing that. It was a bad call. It was a high strike, and Austin Riley, there was a whole thing where they were like, he struck out, and they were like, did he strike out because he checked his swing, or did he strike out, or he didn't check his swing, rather, or did he strike out because it was a strike? And there was confusion there. Snitker was pissed. He came out, started cussing, dropping some F-bombs, and it was great. I loved it. It was awesome. I mean, he's from the Bobby Cox school, as we all know, but he's different. He's his own guy. Bobby would get thrown out all the time. Snitker's not that guy. But he was that night, and it was cool. I love seeing that kind of stuff. I like seeing guys go up and stick up for their players. So that happened earlier. I can't remember what inning. But anyways, some highlights from Game 3 of this series. So we ended up losing 9-7, but it was close at the end. So we scored 4 in the 7th inning to get within 1. And then in the 9th, the Mets scored 3. And after 2 of those runs that they scored in the 9th, so we were down at this point 3 runs, the Braves brought in this rookie pitcher for his first ever appearance. And I was like, what are you guys doing? Because, I mean, good for Freddie Tarnok. I'll say that. I love seeing guys get their first ever appearance and getting to see their families in the stands. The Braves do a great job, by the way, of highlighting that. And just kudos to them for doing that. There's, the thing about baseball that's different than any other sport is there are so many games that, we live with this team for the entire summer. I mean, you watch 162 games, and you get to just because of the time alone, you get to like spend time with these guys. At least it feels like it from a fan's perspective. And when you hear the announcers talk about where these guys went to school, especially the local guys, you get to see when they first come up, you get to see their family. Their family gets interviewed. You get to hear where they came from, how excited, how proud they are. You get to hear about their struggles in getting to where they are today. You get to hear, like, the depth that you get with the player relationship, the player-fan relationship, is more than any other sport, I think. So I love baseball for that. It just, a lot of people who don't understand the excitement of baseball, it's hard to articulate because objectively, I get it. It can be a boring game. But when you spend this much time with a team and you get to see them go through their ups and downs and you get to see how many players come through and you get to hear the stories and you get to see somebody struggle and you watch these guys play for so many games, you see what they go through throughout the season, it's just a different type of fan connection. So anyways, there's a little plug for baseball. But back to Freddie Tarnock. So good for him, but I was pissed that he came in. Honestly, I really was, because it was like I got the impression that the coaches started to play like we were just going to lose. And I don't know who else they had in the bullpen, but there was a couple of decisions that were made kind of like that, where late in the game, the Braves team was like playing well almost in spite of the vibe that the coaches were giving off. So after... And they brought in Freddie Tarnock. He gives up a run immediately. And then we ended up going down 4. So it was a total bummer going into the bottom of the ninth. But we scored 2 runs in the bottom of the ninth. And then we had a runner on. And then Acuna came up. So it was like, oh my God, we're still in this. So in spite of kind of that like feeling like we're playing to lose vibe that they had going on, the Braves just kept battling, kept fighting. And Acuna actually, on the last out of the game, Acuna hit this ball to right center, and it looked good. I mean, I thought it was going to get down for a double and at least score 1. But, Marte made a great play. He tracked it down. He's an athletic guy. He's quick. And, he got the out. So good for them, I guess. But it sucked because we had a lot of momentum going into that at-bat. So it was kind of one of those, like, oh, man, it just sucked when you get all gassed up like that. And then, you lose. But anyways, it was still a great game. And considering it was seemingly out of reach for a while. We were down 5 at one point. Yeah, it was fun to watch. So anyway, some notable stats. Jake Odorizzi started for us, and he was going up against Scherzer. Already a tough matchup anyways, because Scherzer's the truth. The Mets have these 2 pitchers. Oh, I mean, their entire pitching staff is really good. So credit to them. I talk a lot of trash about the Mets on this podcast, and I'll continue to do so, but they're a good team. So credit where it's due. But he was going up against Scherzer, and he just did not look good. He goes 5 innings, gives up 8 hits, 5 earned runs, and I think it's just the way that he throws, but his follow-through, it looks like he's just throwing BP. It's a very relaxed follow-through where it's almost like you see some of these guys, especially Max Scherzer, has a really powerful leg kick. It just seems like he throws his entire soul into the pitch, and Odorizzi just looked like he was just kind of, just tossing it up there, and maybe it's just his style. It's how he does things, but he didn't pitch well and made a bad play where he tried to like flip a ball to Matt Olson, and it just ended up being an infield hit. It was a tough play anyways, but it was a bad look because at that point he'd already given up some runs. Ironically enough, we actually traded Will Smith for Odorizzi, so what does that tell you? As far as like hitting stats go, William Contreras goes 3 for 4. He had a big game. Vaughn Grissom goes 2 for 4 with 3 RBIs. Vaughn Grissom, Jesus, he's awesome, man. Our rookies are just so good. God, it's fun to watch them. We're getting a new wave of guys. And speaking of rookies, check this out. So after the game, I'm going to go ahead and get into this part. Michael Harris signs a life-changing contract for him. Good for you. Signs for 8 years for $72 million through 2030. And this reminds me a lot of how Anthopoulos locked up like Acuna and Albies early. And a lot of people are going, man, it's such a team-friendly deal. And like, I don't know how you handle that. I don't know what I would do. If I was 21 years old and someone said, hey, look, yeah, you could wait a few years and maybe get a bigger deal, but I can go ahead and guarantee you a job for 8 seasons and give you life-changing money right now. And then after that, you reevaluate. You'll probably get another life-changing deal, but I mean, good for him, man. Michael Harris, he loves being a Brave. They were talking about him, how he shows up with like Trae Young jerseys and Falcons gear, and he's from Georgia, and he's a fan, and he's electric, man. There's no doubt about it. Since he's come up, he has been the real deal. Cannot wait to see him be a Brave for a long time. And how about this? Let's just get hyped real quick at our young core. And here's a fun fact on the Braves, just core of players that we've locked in for a while. So get this. Excuse me. Mike Trout's contract is for $426.5 million. And this is a tweet that I'm reading from Danny Vietti. Ronald Acuna, Ozzie Albies, Austin Riley, and Michael Harris's contracts combined are $419 million. So one player, Mike Trout, who's the best in the league, granted, his one contract is $426.5 million. All four of those guys, Acuna, Albies, Riley, Harris, $419. That's incredible. And all those guys are locked up through at least 2027, Albies being the one who his contract expires the first amongst those four. But, can you believe that? We've got those guys for the next 5 years at least, and then some, 5 to 10 years. And we're all four of those guys are less than one guy in Mike Trout. So kudos to Alex Anthopoulos. And, look, honestly, you got to think these players are taking the risk for taking a deal early. So I get that. I understand that. I don't know if they're taking a risk as much, but they're risking, if you wait a season or two, you could get maybe double that. And that's real. But you could also get hurt or not perform and get found out, and then you never get an offer like this again. It's like a crazy, what do you do type scenario. But it's also a risk for the Braves. People don't realize that. We dish out all this money and lock someone in for a long time, and then all of a sudden you're paying guys who aren't even playing for you, Exhibit A in the Atlanta Falcons. We've got a lot of dead money this year. It's a little bit different because it's like we were paying guys that have proven to be good. Dante Fowler's actually taken up a big chunk of cap space this year. He's probably the one exception to that, but Julio Jones and Matt Ryan being the others. But anyways, you don't want to be in a position where you're allocating a lot of funds toward people who aren't contributing to the team. But they've been able to make it work. And look, I'll say this too. As far as we just keep getting these young guys that are just noticeably different than everyone else in the league. Even our young pitchers. Speaking of, by the way, quick fun fact, Mike Soroka pitched in Rome, I believe. He had a rehab start, and in 4 innings, he had 8 strikeouts and no runs. So here we go. Come on, Mike. So anyways, I think we need to recognize, the staff. Because look at all the guys that are coming out. Look at all the guys that keep coming out that are just this dominant right away. Straight from Double-A was Michael Harris and Vaughn Grissom. So you got to think big shout out to the coaching staff down in our minor league system. Big shout out to the people who were analyzing our draft picks. You know what I mean? Who would have known? Because Vaughn Grissom was not a super high draft pick. He might have been 7th round, 11th. I can't remember exactly which one it was. I did reference that a couple of episodes ago. I gave a little history on Vaughn Grissom, but I already forgotten, so sorry. But he wasn't the number 1 overall pick. Neither was Michael Harris. And our organization is able to bring these guys up and make them into these just electrifying guys. And right now, Vaughn Grissom and Michael Harris remind me of the first couple years of Acuna, Albies, and even Dansby Swanson. Dansby Swanson, he's finally coming into his own in a way that those other guys got to a little bit sooner, in my opinion, statistically with Ronald Acuna, for sure. But when those 3 guys were the new guys, defensively, they were outstanding. They were exciting at the plate, but they're base running. And all these young guys, we've got 5 guys that are on the base path. It's game over. And it does change the game. It gets in the pitcher's head. It changes the chess match that's played at the plate when you have 5 guys that can just steal and that can just score from first, like Vaughn Grissom did tonight. So in the game-winning run, in the final game against the Mets, Vaughn Grissom was at first, and it was a 3-2, 2-out scenario. The count was 3-2, 2 outs, so he started stealing, but Michael Harris got like a soft hit up the middle. I mean, he got it. It rolled maybe 40 feet past the second base bag, and Ron Washington waved him. I'm going to go ahead and get into the final game, but Wash waved him, and I couldn't believe he sent him. I mean, it was so awesome. Electric slide to end the game. There's a slow-mo video out there somewhere of his face when he slides through home, Vaughn Grissom's. His whole like face just like widens up, and it's just the coolest thing ever. Great shot there that they captured. But anyways, in the final game, we won 3-2. Awesome game. Both deGrom and Fried dueled all game. Neither starter gave up a walk. 0 walks from both Fried and deGrom. So that's some ace-type stuff. Both look good, but Michael Harris drives in Vaughn Grissom on an epic send. Ron Washington, God, I love that guy. And I got to tell you, when Chip Caray says, and Wash is going to send him, anytime he says that, I physically lift out of my seat. Anytime I hear Chip Caray say, and Wash is going to send him, I jump out of the seat. I can't help it. It's a reaction. It's as if a doctor hit my kneecap with a hammer and my leg just goes. That's what Chip Caray does to me when he gets jacked on a Ron Washington send. It is amazing. So anyways, that happened. That's how we scored the winning run. But notable stats from that game, Austin Riley goes 2 for 4 with an RBI. Dansby Swanson 1 for 4 with an RBI. And those are the only 2 runs that we had for a while until Michael Harris drove, I think it was in the 7th or 8th maybe. But anyways, both Harris and Grissom go 1 for 3, but they got their hits late when it mattered. So electric play, electric moment, and Kenley Jansen comes in to close it. It's fantastic. It's unreal. I love this team. I love these Braves. And it just feels right now. I mean, look, over the last 10 games, we're 9-1. That's a big deal in August. 9-1 over the last 10 games. So here's our schedule coming up. So right now, by the way, we're 3.5 games back. So this was a huge series because we came in 5.5 back. So if we had gone down, even if it was 2-2, I guess that would have stayed the same. If we had lost tonight, it would have been a full 2-game swing. You know what I mean? And then, yeah, I mean, if we had, I don't even want to think about it. Whatever. We're awesome. We did great. So upcoming games. So tough games coming up too tomorrow night, or well, tonight, depending on when you're listening. 7:20 on Friday, the Astros are in town, and they're here all weekend. And then after the Astros, we have a bit of a reprieve, sort of. We've got the Pirates for 3 in Pittsburgh, Cardinals for 3 in St. Louis. That's going to be tough. St. Louis is a great baseball town, and the Cardinals are a good team. Do not sleep on them. I don't think anyone is, but, for whatever that's worth. Then we get kind of an easy stretch. We have the Rockies, the Marlins, and the A's, and the Mariners, which will be exciting, the Giants, who have been blowing it. And then to round out the season, we've got the Phillies, Nats, Mets, Marlins. Boom. Big time division. I mean, it's a division month. September, basically after, mid-September to the end of the season, it's all division. So those are going to be huge too. So get hyped, Braves country. I hope you enjoyed these games. I know that I did. Fantastic stuff. Go Braves. So, I'll say this before I move on to the next segment. Excuse me. I'm feeling better, by the way. I was a little sick last episode, and I'm like probably, 97% better, but I still my throat gets a little clogged up sometimes. I don't know about clogged up, but an itch. I have an itch from time to time. So anyways, something that happened in Game 4. Oh, yeah, okay. I noticed this in the second inning. The Mets, one of the Mets players, his name escapes me at the moment, hit what looked like a home run, but it was called foul. And, I mean, it really did. When I saw it live, I was like, oh, it's a home run. It was just really close, but they called it foul, and then they were going to challenge it, but instead of challenging it, Jeff Francoeur was like, oh, or maybe he's going to do a crew chief review. I was like, well, what's the difference between a crew chief review and like a manager's challenge? And the Mets manager walked out and he talked to the crew chief, and then they went, yeah, we're going to review it. So I was like, well, isn't that just a challenge? Like, did he just go tell them to review it and they did? Like, why wouldn't that count as a challenge? Like, that is that's a challenge. But I guess there is a difference, and so I have this pulled up for you guys here. So, officially, at any time during a game, a crew chief may initiate a replay review of a potential home run call without a manager challenge being exercised. Beginning in the 8th inning, a crew chief may conduct a replay review of all reviewable calls upon his own initiative or upon the request of a manager who has no remaining manager challenges. So I guess if a manager calls a challenge, they have to review it. But a crew chief review can be requested after the 8th inning by a manager, and I guess at that point they have the ability to say no because it's a request at that point. It's not like I don't have anything to use. So, hey, bro, will you take a look? And they can or cannot. And then at any point in the game for a home run, specifically, the crew chief can look at that. So I'm assuming that the crew chief was already going to look at that because it was so close. Because, well, no, I think, no, scratch that. Because it was a home run, the Mets manager requested it. So, yeah. Anyways, if you guys were wondering that, if you thought, wait a minute, is this a challenge or a review? At any time during the game, on a home run call, the crew chief can initiate it. And I think at that point, the manager had requested it, but because it was a home run, it doesn't have to be after the 8th inning for the manager to request that. So the crew chiefs do have the ability to do that on anything after the 8th, a home run before that. So, I caught that, and I remember being a little confused, wondering what the hell's going on. So that's what happened. So fun fact for you. So anyways, moving on to Deshaun Watson. So I'm not going to offer any opinions on this. I'm just going to literally report the news to you because there's a lot of news going on with Deshaun Watson, and there has been for a long time now. So it's finally, all of these suspensions and fines. It's the book is getting closed on this, so we think. Who knows? Over time, I'm sure there's going to be the rebuilding of his legacy. There's going to be all sorts of opinions about him one way or another. Totally understand every point of view. I get it. I mean, I can't think of anything that was this loud since Michael Vick. I could be wrong, but nothing pops to my mind that's been this loud because it was like a game-changing face of the franchise quarterback. Obviously, it gets blown up more, but there was a lot of stuff going on that naturally just blew this up, so I don't think it was just his place in the league that did that. However, here's what happened. So I'm going to tell you real quick, this is going to be brief, I'm going to tell you who is Sue Robinson and what did she do, what happened after Sue Robinson did what she did, what's happening now, and to give you a, somewhat coherent, I hope, timeline of how this has happened. So Sue Robinson, who is she? So during the whole Deshaun Watson ordeal, there was a bunch of civil suits, over 20 civil lawsuits, and 2 grand juries declined to indict Watson on criminal charges. So they remained civil. So because of that, Watson had the ability to kind of settle these things out of court. 23 of the 24 have been settled silently. And, as far as a criminal investigation is concerned or whatever, or criminal proceedings, it kind of ended there. However, the NFL conducted their own investigation into the accusations and presented its findings to a former federal judge, Sue Robinson. So, the NFL conducted an investigation, presented these findings to a former federal court judge, and asked that she recommend the discipline. So what happened is the NFL said, hey, Sue Robinson, recommend the discipline for Watson. And after she issued her recommendation, the NFL can then appeal the sanction to Commissioner Roger Goodell unless she decides there would not be any discipline against Watson. So a lot of people have been saying, oh, he only got 5 games. Well, the whole plan this entire time was that the NFL gave Sue Robinson the ability to recommend the discipline, and she's not connected to the NFL. And after she does that, then the NFL can appeal it. So anyways, that's what happened initially. And I think they just wanted to get somebody who's disconnected from the NFL because this was so complex. And Roger Goodell, the dude's probably gotten death threats at this point from all the different things that people have been upset with him for, whether it's, Deflategate or Bountygate or all sorts of stuff. Tom Brady, being the center of a lot of these things. So they wanted to get somebody completely separate, and that was Sue Robinson, former federal court judge, to hand out the initial disciplinary action, essentially. So, after that happened, Sue Robinson ruled for a 6-game suspension for Watson. Sorry, not 5, 6, which is well short of the NFL's preferred indefinite suspension of at least a year. So the NFL already had like a preferred suspension, and she came way short of that. In her ruling, Robinson determined Watson violated the NFL's personal conduct policy, noting his pattern of conduct is more egregious than any before ruled by the NFL. And this is from sportingnews.com, by the way. All this information I'm getting at this moment is from Sporting News. She also noted that the league had provided ample evidence that Watson accusers did not consent to being touched. Despite that, she deemed his violations were related to non-violent sexual conduct, and that the league's established precedent of similar suspensions, 4 games for Ben Roethlisberger in 2010, 6 for Ezekiel Elliott in 2017, limited the length of the suspension to 6 games. She also claimed that the NFL was trying to enact a new conduct policy as opposed to the one agreed to in the NFL and the NFLPA's collective bargaining agreement. By challenging her ruling, the NFL is saying there is no precedent for Watson's case, considering the scope of his sexual assault violations. So, what does that mean? She came down and said, look, there's a little bit of precedent from Ben Roethlisberger and Ezekiel Elliott, so based on the fact that criminal charges were dropped, and I'm looking at all the evidence, and yes, he was inappropriate, his attitude was egregious, yada, yada, so I'm recommending 6 games, kind of, because Zeke got 6 and Ben Roethlisberger got 4, but the NFL came back and said, look, we're going to, oppose this thing, basically, because he's different. This is different. There's more people involved. It goes a lot deeper. The roots run deep. So anyways, that's what happened there. So the NFL appealed this, and what has happened now is Deshaun Watson will serve an 11-game suspension without pay after he was accused by more than 24 women of sexual misconduct during massage sessions. This is from ESPN.com. Watson will also pay a fine of $5 million and undergo mandatory evaluation by behavioral experts and follow their suggested treatment program. Watson's fine and contributions from both the NFL and Browns of $1 million each will create a fund to support nonprofit organizations in the United States that educate young people on healthy relationships, promote education, and prevent sexual misconduct and assault. So, Watson's suspension takes effect August 30th when the NFL teams cut down to the roster limit of 53 players. He will be eligible for reinstatement on November 28th and will be available to play for the Browns again in Week 13 when Cleveland faces his old team, the Houston Texans, in Houston. So, I wonder if they went, oh man, should we do 10? And they went, I don't know, man. He plays Houston in week 11, after 11, so maybe we should do that. Because, that's kind of, that's going to be, honestly, that's going to get crazy high ratings. When his first game back, he plays Houston. Imagine if Houston's good and if, the Browns are good this year. And then they play each other in week 13 when he comes back. I don't know if they did that on purpose. Call me a conspiracy theorist. But if they did, they knew they would be making a lot of money that day. So, anyways, in conclusion, Sue Robinson, former federal court judge, said, hey, 6 games, here's the deal, here's why. NFL said, nope, we want more. They got more. There was essentially a settlement amongst the NFLPA and the NFL, settlement of 11 games and the $5 million fine, and he comes back to play the Texans later this year. So, that's the news. Think what you want, It is what it is. So moving on to Falcons news. Don't have too much of this for you guys, but we do have some. Falcons DT Marlon Davidson is going to miss the rest of the preseason after a knee scope. This is from the Falcoholic. They've been hit hard with injuries on the defensive line. That is true. And one of the defensive line additions that we got this year just quit. He just said, nope, I'm done. And he just quit after 13 days of signing with Atlanta. So that sucked. But hope Marlon Davidson's okay. It's kind of a, crazy thing with him. So from Michael Rothstein on Twitter, after he kind of reported some of this news, Marlon Davidson, I didn't realize this. Oh, crap, here it is. Marlon Davidson was a second-round pick in 2020, and he's been fighting for a roster spot and has not been considered a roster lock throughout camp. So second-round pick 2 years ago, and this year during training camp, he has not been considered a roster lock. So the fact that he's getting, a knee scope and going to miss the rest of the preseason, that's a big blow to him. So I hope he's going to be okay. And I hope the Falcons can figure out something with their defensive line because we suck so bad. Terrible with getting pressure. We were last in the league in sacks. And like the next worst team, or I guess the next better team, whatever, the second to last, was like way better than us. So we were the worst, and we were that much worse than the second to last team in sacks. So Falcons need to get some defensive line depth, need to get some pressure there. And, I hope they do. But, yeah, bummer for Marlon Davidson. Hope you come back and you're healthy. Some good news for the Falcons. This is from sportstalkatl.com. Love what they're doing in the local sporting world of the city of Atlanta. They're fantastic. They're a good follow on Twitter. Certainly entertaining. They talk a lot of shit. It's fun to see. But Sports Talk ATL was referencing a article by ESPN, and it's titled, "The Falcons have one of the best young cores in football." Okay, all right. And it says here, ESPN believes Atlanta has one of the best young cores in football. Scott Spratt recently ranked every team's core. Oh, yeah, your core. And the Falcons came in at number 4 under these parameters. Number of starts made by players under 25 years old. Number of snaps played by players under 25 years old. Quality of play of players under 25 years old. Relative importance of positions, draft value added in the 2022 draft with extra emphasis placed on the premium picks in the first 2 rounds. Expected key starters and reserves under 25 years old for teams in 2022. Team track records for talent evaluation and development, significant injuries and suspensions that may affect the players under that age. So anyways, those are the parameters they were looking at. And of those, they believe that Atlanta Falcon has the number 4 best young core in all of football. I hope they're right. What does that mean? What does this mean? It means nothing. It means absolutely nothing. Except that I'm happy when I read it. I like reading things like that. Things like that excite me. They get me going. They get me jazzed up. And, what are you going to do? So before we move on, that's all the Falcons news I got for you, but it's coming in hot, coming in so hot. We've got preseason next week on the 22nd and 25th, I believe, and then we're 2 weeks away. Let's go. Last thing, this is interesting. Chargers' Derwin James is signing a 4-year extension, averaging $19.1 million a year, making him the highest paid safety in NFL history. Good for you, buddy. That was reported by Ian Rappaport at Rapsheet on Twitter. Those are good follows, just him and Adam Schefter. I mean, really, for NFL shit, it's like, just follow those guys. So, yeah, there you go. We're moving on to our final segment of this show. I hope you've enjoyed it so far, and thank you for listening. Before we go on to Top 5 Friday, excuse me, I just want to say thank you for listening. Make sure to follow us on Twitter at All Georgia Sports Guy, All GA Sports Guy. Also, it's All Georgia Sports on TikTok, All GA Sports on TikTok, YouTube, All Gas. Just type that in. You'll probably find us. Can't remember any sort of like handle on YouTube. But anyways, that's where you can find clips of the show, highlights of the show, and, upcoming stuff. So anyways, please send us a follow, give us a like, give us a follow, give us a subscribe, comment, have fun with it. We're having fun with it over here, so we hope that you do as well. So anyways, going on to our Top 5 Friday, final segment of the day, Top 5 Favorite Falcons. Now, as always, this is my list. This list might be different than your list. If it is, that's okay. If you think my list is trash, tell me about it. I would love to know. Also, you can email me, talkingallgas@gmail.com, talkingallgas@gmail.com. So tell me if I'm stupid. Tell me if I'm full of it. Tell me if this list stinks. I'd love to hear it. So my number 5 favorite Falcon of all time is Jamal Anderson. Now, Jamal Anderson is credited with my first ever memories as a Falcons fan from watching him in 1998. He's the one that started the Dirty Bird. And in that year, so get this, in 1998, he would have been a fantasy just beast this year. He had 1,846 rushing yards, 319 receiving yards, so over 2,000 yards total, over 2,100 yards total, and he had 16 total touchdowns. He would have won you your league that year. He was an absolute beast. But Jamal Anderson, I think it's very nostalgic for me too because I didn't really watch him much after that. I mean, that was his best year by far. He had a couple of other really good seasons. Started the Dirty Bird. That was electric. Obviously, in '98, when that was going on, going to the Super Bowl, that was a fun run because we weren't expected to go that far, but I was in like the second grade. And I remember watching them that year. I went to a game that year. That was really fun. I remember watching them beat the Vikings in Minnesota in that playoff game. Do you remember that? In the NFC Championship? Oh my God. Sorry, Vikings fans. I know that's something that you probably don't want to hear, but it was amazing. I literally, after that game, ran outside yelling and screaming, cheering for joy. So anyways, that's my number 5 favorite Falcon. Number 4 is Warrick Dunn. My number 4 favorite Falcon is Warrick Dunn. He had an incredible career. People don't realize how good he was. He played for 12 seasons. That's a long career as a running back. 12 seasons. He had 10,967 yards with 4.1 yards per carry. He had 5,000-yard rushing seasons. He had 1,416 in 2005. He was also a threat in the pass game. He was great in the open field. And he's also just a great guy. I mean, talk about, like, this is why, I mean, statistically, especially during that year when we went to the NFC Championship and lost to the Eagles eventually, but the whole DVD thing, Dunn, Vick, Duckett, you had Dunn, that shifty back out of the backfield. He was fast. He was our starter. He was our guy. He could catch. He could even hit you, but he was just quick. And then we had TJ Duckett, who would just literally just slam your mouth into the turf. And then he had Michael Vick. It was amazing. So that was just an incredible year. But Warrick Dunn he caught my attention that year, obviously. But for years we got to watch him. But what really, makes him make this list for me was how good of a guy he is. So his foundation, his charity, teamed up with Habitat for Humanity. And I got this stat from WDC.org, but his charity and Habitat for Humanity built and donated over 145 homes to single parents. So his thing was like building homes for single moms, and he was doing that while he was playing. He had this charity, teamed up with Habitat for Humanity, and literally gave homes to these single mothers and single parents. One of those, fun fact, was actually Deshaun Watson's mom. So, crazy how things come around full circle there. But yeah, Warrick Dunn's just an amazing person. If you do that, if you're able to have the capacity and the bandwidth to dedicate your time to doing that while you're playing in the NFL, you're just a next level good person. So good for you. Thank you, Warrick Dunn. That's why you make my list. Number 3 is Matt Ryan. Statistically, he's a Hall of Famer. So number 3 favorite Falcon, Matt Ryan. Statistically, a Hall of Famer, but he was an excellent face of the city. I mean, particularly following the fallout of the whole Michael Vick dogfighting thing, our hearts were broken in Atlanta. We were like, what are we going to do? Who's going to be our guy? Who are we going to pull for? And we had one kind of gap year, and then we drafted Matt Ryan. And from that day that we drafted him up until this year, he's been the guy in the city, and he's been a great face for the city. He's a great person, a great guy, awesome quarterback. He's the only ever Atlanta Falcon to win the NFL MVP. And it's just kind of like, what's there not to like about the guy? There's been a lot of times throughout the last decade where people have always given him a hard time. I think because they go, oh, well, you've got Drew Brees and Tom Brady and Peyton Manning. Is Matt Ryan really that guy? Look, I don't know. In 2016 he was, and he has been. I mean, really, like he's in that conversation of guys. And as he's getting older, he's gotten better. Last year, his stats were not an accurate reflection of how he played last year, in my opinion. His last year with the Falcons statistically might have been his worst. But if you watch the way he commanded a terrible roster to however many wins we got, we shouldn't have got as many wins as we got. But because of him, we did. And that's an amazing quarterback. That's a great leader. And you hear about the way they talk about him in Indy. I mean, the respect that he has around the league, especially in Indianapolis right now, I'm excited for him. I'm rooting for him. But he is absolutely my number 3 favorite Falcon. Awesome guy. Great quarterback. So glad that I got to watch him for whatever it was. I don't know, 14 years, 13 years, something crazy. So, Matt Ryan's number 3. My number 2 favorite Falcon of all time is Julio Jones. He is the best receiver we've ever had. He has Megatron-like abilities. He was truly unguardable. He has multiple 300-yard games. I mean, how insane is that? And he's got some of the best Falcons highlights of all time. If you just want to have fun, there's a few guys on the you can look at highlights from all of these guys that I'm referencing, but Julio Jones especially, he is a beast. He is, yeah, I mean, if you have a list of top 3 receivers in the last decade, like in the 2010s, you have to have Julio Jones on that list. You have to. I mean, who are you going to put there instead of him? You know, when you think about, oh man, top 5, top 10s, top 3s and stuff like that, you just go, okay, there's some guys that are debatable, but Julio Jones, I don't think is even debatable. He's on the list for best receivers of that decade. Absolutely. His size, his speed, his route running, his playmaking. I mean, just listen to how other players talk about him, especially when he was like in the top 10, 100 players in like, 2017 or something when the players vote. Just listen to how they talk about him. He's just an animal, and he's inspired a lot of receivers because of how good he is. He's a poster guy. He's a guy that you'd have a poster of. Easily. So speaking of posters, and speaking of a guy that you would have absolutely have had a poster or a picture of somewhere if you're a Falcon fan, my number 1 favorite Falcon of all time is Michael Vick. Wasn't even close. Favorite Falcons of all time? 100%. Take the dog fighting out of it. And look, here's, I'll get to that at the end. Michael Vick is my favorite Falcon of all time because he literally started a generation of lifelong Falcons fans. He electrified a city and the league as a whole. He changed the QB position forever. Now, I know other QBs have been mobile. I know that John Elway was mobile and he, changed the position. You have the San Francisco guy. Crap, what the hell? Seriously? Lefty. Steve Young. Steve Young did the same thing. Those guys definitely had a big impact on the game, but none of them were as electrifying as Michael Vick. Go look at highlights. Remember what it was like watching him. He was the star of the league, hands down. I mean, he electrified the entire league. He changed the game. Deion Sanders the other day had a video where he's talking about the Hall of Fame and how the Hall of Fame requirements have gotten too loose. He's like, it's the Hall of Fame. He's like, it's not you're good, it's you changed the game. And Deion Sanders absolutely changed the game. Michael Vick changed the game. And being an Atlanta fan during that time literally started a generation of Falcons fans that I think will always be Falcons fans because of what we experienced. I've talked about what it takes to get a really rabid fan base in a city, and it's a consistency of winning, it's a consistency of excitement. And Michael Vick was an absolute just spark plug in this entire fan base. And it was following the 98 season where we kind of weren't expected to be good, but we were anyways, in spite of our expectations. And it was almost like the way that the Hawks have been exciting recently, but we don't really expect them to be. But when they're good, it's awesome and we're excited about it. That's what the Falcons were like in 98. So imagine that happens. Couple years where you're like, okay, where are we going next? And then Michael Vick comes in, takes over. 100% my favorite Falcon. Anyone who lived in Atlanta and who grew up with him as our quarterback during that time, or anyone who's just a fan of the NFL during that time when Michael Vick was around and playing, you know. You know what I'm talking about. You know why he's number 1. And honestly, I'm really proud of him for what he's done in his later part of his life. Just as a human being, this is what I was going to get into this a few moments ago, but I was like, well, let me finish just hyping up Michael Vick first. But, what he did was terrible. And honestly, I have the same attitude toward Deshaun Watson. I don't know much about what's going on. I don't really know if anyone does. 23 of the 24 suits were settled silently. And there's clearly been evidence where he has done, he has expressed regret. A lot of people don't think it's enough regret. I don't know what enough regret is for something like this. I don't know. All that I can say is that I pray and I wish for human beings who have made mistakes, no matter who you are, that you find some sort of, relief and salvation in your life. And what does that look like? I don't know what that looks like, but I can say that I'm a Michael Vick fan today. I was heartbroken when I found out what he did back then, and seeing him now and hearing him now and seeing what he's done with his life and how he handles himself and how he's given back to the community and how he's, seems to have reflected on his time as a young man. I'm happy that he was an Atlanta Falcon. So go Michael Vick. You're the guy. And, that's awesome stuff. So anyways, to close out the episode, we're going to circle back around to our trivia question. So if you remember, the trivia question was, who had the most rushing yards in a single season in NCAA history? Who has the most rushing yards in a single season in NCAA history? The answer, of course, is Barry Sanders in 1988 at Oklahoma State with 2,628 yards. Barry Sanders, 1988 at Oklahoma State with 2,628 rushing yards. So, Barry Sanders holds the record. He has the most of all time. That record still has not been broken. And fun fact, actually, was that in 2014, Melvin Gordon came close. So he's second most single-season rushing yards of all time. And in 2014, he had 2,587. So I want to say that's less than 50 yards away from the record that Barry Sanders set. And if you guys remember in 2014, there was a lot of debate that year at who should be drafted to the NFL sooner. Should it be Melvin Gordon or should it be Todd Gurley? And that was a really big debate. And, of course, Georgia fans were like, Todd Gurley, easy, hands down, no doubt. And, for the years that Todd Gurley was electric at the NFL, he was better than Melvin Gordon. Although Melvin Gordon had a great NFL career, too. I don't know if he's still around. He might be. But he's no slouch. He's been a great player. He's been a great fantasy football addition in years past, especially, when he was playing with Phillip Rivers and the Chargers. So, anyways, fun stuff. Awesome show. So glad you guys have stuck with it if you have. And you know what? It's Friday. Go enjoy yourself. Have a great day. End the week strong. And go make someone's day today. And it's not that difficult to do. I end every show by saying this. Go out and make someone's day. And it's so easy. It's so easy to make someone's day. It could be a smile. Could be a compliment. Could be a good deed. It could just be praying for somebody, Pray for someone. You never know what that might mean. You never know what might happen. I don't. But I like to think that I do. I like to think that it helps. And so, you know what? Go do that. Call someone you haven't called in a while. Go be nice to your mother. Call your mother. There it is. Call your mom. Say hi. Say hello and tell her you love her. So go make someone's day. And with that being said, I love you guys, and I will see you on Monday. See ya.